every single song on this record lives so deep inside my heart and my DNA. So for each of those songs, it's a personal experience for me. And Mark and I had to make this our own. If you're going to do a cover, just like with Dark Side, it's not a copy. I'm not a copy artist. It's bring your own sensibility musically, soulfully to it. And I think we did that. Some of these songs, are sacred cows. It's like, you don't touch Nick Drake. But Riverman had to do it. Just had to do one of the most beautiful songs I have ever heard in my life. Heard it, however many years ago as a teenager, you would, 50 years ago, and said to myself, someday I'm going to record that. And of course, ELO, because I love ELO. Love it.
Midnight on the water, I saw the ocean's daughter.
All right, thanks for joining me on Life in Surround. Today we have a very special guest. This is Mary Fahl. I have been aware of her musical career for quite some time. October Project, solo albums, movie soundtrack cuts, and in the last few years, one and now two surround albums, stereo as well, and importantly for me, because I'm absolutely obsessed with it, surround mixes. The first one was From the Dark Side of the Moon, which thank heavens Bob Clearmountain always mixes in 5.1, so this existed.
Yeah.
Mark Doyle unearthed it, twisted your arm, sat you down.
Along with the late great Rick Pepe.
Yes.
Convinced me I had to do this.
And so this came to life as a standalone Blu-ray, just surround music lovers, like absolute dream come true, a stunning album. Is it still for sale? Is it sold out?
It is. It's still, no, I've got
okay.
All right. They're for sale on my website, and I should have them for sale on Amazon as well, except that Amazon doesn't understand what it is because it's in a DVD type package.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's so.
But I think
I'm learning. I'm still learning about all.
You're
this.
Up on immersive audio album, right?
Yes, for FLAC downloads. Yes, and in fact,
yes,
it was named Listener's Choice Immersive Album of the Year.
I am aware, and it was well deserved. Okay, so I just wanted to, give viewers a chance to refresh their memories. Like, if anybody watching doesn't have From the Dark Side of the Moon, stereo, surround, or otherwise, this is incredible. It is, bias aside, because I, obviously like Mary a lot. This is one of the gems of my collection and pretty much anybody's collection. Okay, so From the Dark Side of the Moon. And then now we have your current album.
Yeah.
Can't Get It Out of My Head, aptly titled because I can't get it out of my head. It is I'll just give my bottom line up front. I love this album. The mixes from stereo through surround are superb. They fit the music. They engage you. The 5.1 mix, as it ought to, immerses you and opens up details. The vocal presence is just spot on, and everything in support is just absolutely where it ought to be, lending all the harmonics and harmonies and rhythmic interest and everything. It's I love this album. Very well done. So we're here today to discuss it and to discuss you as an artist and this album. And so that's all that I have by way of introduction. So I would just ask, Mary, can you tell us your musical history from your perspective leading up to this album?
Well, just to quickly encapsulate, I was the lead singer of a band in the 90s called October Project. And I find us on those lists, of playlists, and we're ladies of the 90s. So We toured with Sarah McLachlan and people like that, with very soaring music, lots of harmony, passionate lyrics. It was beautiful. And we made 2 albums on Epic. We got signed out of New York, signed along with people like Jeff Buckley. We were all part of this little group at a place called Cafe Chenet in the Lower East Side. And as I say, we toured with Sarah McLachlan, made 2 records, and then we were dropped, which is sort of a rite of passage in the music industry. And
Sure.
I decided not to stay. They temporarily disbanded. They have since reformed, but the essential group that was the original October Project was no more. And I really felt that I had to grow as an artist. I was not allowed to write with them. I was told I would never write with them. And I just felt like I had to grow. And so I thought, we've done 2 nice records, everybody moves on. And I learned how to be a writer, which was very, very frightening. But I worked at the beginning with some very good people. One guy, Bob Riley, from a band called Gracepool. I worked with Ramsey McLean, who is best known for the work that he did as a lyricist for the early Harry Connick records. He wrote all the lyrics to the She record. And then
Oh man, she is one of my favorite Harry records, by the way.
I did not know, really. Well, Ramsey was the
so
lyricist.
Quirky and funky, like I love it.
It's quirky and funky, yeah.
I only love Star Turtle more, so to give you a taste of.
Well, and I learned something from each one of them, and then I began to write better songs and then I was able to do it on my own, but it took a while. And in the meantime, I had to go back to my regular day job. I was, a freelance recruiter, and I worked out of my home, but I ended up doing a lot of television commercials, thank God, because I needed the money. And I always say that I used to be so mad when people would say, when people would refer to October Project as sort of like Epic's Enya. And I was like, no, I don't sound like Enya. I'm a human. Okay. But then when I started getting commercials, they'd say, can you kind of do this like Enya? And be like, yes, that's me. I can do it. So I got car commercials. So I'd have to be, the car commercial Ofra Haza, or the car commercial Enya, and it was very helpful because it enabled me to take that money I was making and pour it into my career. So I put a new band together, and a band that most of the members that I put together ended up becoming a band called Olabelle, and they were great. They also got a deal on Sony, and so they toured with me with my little songs, and I just never thought I'd get another deal, Mike. I thought I was too old. I was maybe 40 at the time. And, but because of that, I thought, well, I have this band, I have money, I made a record, I made a little EP, and I sent it out into the world, and I got a PR person, and lo and behold, I started to come to the attention of classical labels, because thinking that I would never get another deal, I decided to incorporate some of my own interests. I studied medieval history and literature, and I like medieval music. So I put in a little bit of that, not the whole show, just sort of peppered it, because I thought, well, who cares? I don't have to be commercially viable because no one's going to sign me anyway. And that's what brought me to the attention. And then eventually I got called up to Sony Classical, of all places. It was a shock to me. And 1 week after 9/11, I went up and I auditioned for them, and I had a new piano. My band could not even get into New York because they were stuck outside. They couldn't get on a plane. So there I was with a new piano player. I played them some of my stuff, and then they asked me to sing an aria. And I explained to them that I wasn't classically trained. I loved opera, but I'm not Renee Fleming. I'm singing for Peter Gelb now, and the head of the Met. But I said, okay, what would you like me to sing? And I said, Nessun Dorma. And they said, do you know it? And I said, I do. Yeah. So I gave them my key, and away I went. And according to them, that's what closed the deal for me. And I love that. I mean, that's one of the most beautiful arias ever written. And so I sang that, and they didn't quite know what to do with me after they signed me, but they thought they wanted me to sing with an orchestra. I had to do an aria, and they wanted me to write for movies. And I did all 3. Singing with an orchestra was a stunning experience. It was heaven for me. to hear something you'd written suddenly, you know, within the context of these, all of these strings. And so, oh my God, it was just, I burst into tears. And I wrote for Gods and Generals. I wrote the theme song. That's, I think, how you found me. And then I wrote for another film called The Guys. And but I think that the challenge of that record was that it was very eclectic and probably should have been honed in more stylistically, but it is what it is. And it does take you on a journey, on a sonic journey. I think radio was expecting the third October Project record, and they did not get that. And they didn't, it was just at this cusp of a lot of AAA stations kind of becoming the folk police. And the folk police did not like the fact that I did an aria. So it kind of, first of all of the whole regime at Sony Classical was gone. They all got either left or were fired. And then the BMG guys came in and took over, and my contract wasn't renewed, period, end of discussion. So it was disappointing, but you know, you kind of cry a little bit and then you dry your tears. And I put on my favorite hat, my big fur hat, and I went out and got myself a new manager. And it was there with my new manager that I was put together with Mark Doyle and David Werner. And we all discussed what would be a really good project for me. I didn't want to be a girl with a guitar. I thought there's so many of them out there. It's a glut that, and they agreed. They said, let's do something really interesting. And we talked about what records we liked. And I just felt that Pink Floyd and Dark Side of the Moon in particular, it just always spoke to me on such a deep, deep level in every way. And it was one of the few records that my brother owned that I liked. So he had a lot of boy music. And so Pink Floyd was, for me, boy music for girls. And so we on spec, labor of love, I would go up to Syracuse every other week or so. And we gradually built this record layer by layer by layer. And in that record making experience, David Werner and Mark Doyle had a very clear vision of what they wanted. A lot of times producers don't. They let you kind of, well, let you tell me, you know, or they'll let you fool around in the studio and discover it. But oh no, they had a clear vision. So they would give me a suggestion like, why don't you try this? And I would, you know, and a lot of the chanting that I did, I found on my own, a lot of that. And I felt so comfortable with the two of them. I felt I was in such good hands that and even though they're both perfectionists, I just didn't feel judged. And I felt like I could experiment and try anything with my vocals. And we recorded in Mark's tiny, itty bitty little closet of a studio. I sat right next to David, like right here, and here was me. And I would do all these vocals, and we just had great fun. And then our management started shopping it around, and lo and behold, the fellas at V2 Records loved this record. They said, ooh, this is interesting. So they flew up to Syracuse and they said, we want to see you perform this live. And we put on what I call a show. We got some kids from Syracuse University to build us a set. We had these interesting sort of Maya Deren-esque films, and we did it in this little jewel box of a theater, and we got a deal. And just as the record was about to come out, V2 ran out of money, and they were giving all of us who had records coming out lifeboats. So I bought the rights back. But again, it was yet another blow in my career that it was hard to take. And again, that's when the famous surround mix was lost in a fire at the mastering studio. We thought it was gone. And it wasn't until years later that Mark Doyle found it among his files. And I tried it out on Rick Pepe, who was a dear friend and audiophile. And he said, Mary, I'm telling you, you have to do this. He called it the Hope Diamond of surround mixes. And I'm like, really? Really? And then Mark made me come up to Syracuse and listen again. It had been years since I heard that. And I sat there and I was stunned. I was stunned, and I heard things that I had forgotten I had done on there. And Bob Clearmountain had done this incredible, you know, he is maybe one of the best, because Ronald
He
is
is
right
one of
up
the
there
best.
with him. They are neck and neck, you know. I don't want to play favorites. But it was an astonishing mix. And so I released it, and of course we met you, and then this thing, you know, I didn't promote this at all, Mike. I didn't get a PR person. I didn't do anything. This thing was word, because it was just a surround mix on Blu-ray. You know, my average listener is not going to be an audiophile, but the audio files, this was like passed down, you know, like, here, I got something, you know, and it was just word of mouth. And that was so gratifying. And it was so gratifying that people like you just understood it and loved it and pushed it. I mean, those things that happens very rarely in this business. And so I love it. I'm so proud of it. And you know, and again, this is it wasn't a typical Mary Fahl record. This was really, it was a vision shared by David Werner and Mark Doyle.
Right.
And, so anyway, my husband has just dropped me a note. He said, interview is half over. Talk about the new album. I told you I was chatty, but you asked me. So then Mark and I ended up working together for years. And he's my music director. We did Live at the Mock Junk Opera House. And we did, you know, we do shows all over the Northeast and East Coast, and with a band, full band. And then we decided to make, during the lockdown, we made a Christmas record. And neither one of us liked Christmas music, but we said, this is going to be a Christmas record for those who don't like Christmas music. And I had such a good time working with him. It was, again, I feel like I can do anything when I'm working with Mark. I never feel judged, or I can just be myself and explore and make mistakes. It doesn't matter. And because we had such a good time doing that, we decided to make this record, Can't Get It Out of My Head. And we've all had a rough couple of years. But, you know, my mother and my sister passed away, not from COVID, but other things. And it just was a lot for me. I was down in the dumps. And so to get myself out of this funk, I wanted to go back. I was feeling kind of rootless, and I wanted to go back to the songs that made me fall in love with music. And I had older siblings that had great record collections, but very disparate. Like my sister was all the female artists of the 60s. My oldest brother was the folky, and my other brother was the boy music guy. But they were great albums that I grew up listening to. And I sing the way I sing because of that mix. And then I started to develop my own taste. And I bought, what is it, for $1, you get the 10 or 12 Columbia records. And I did that. And a lot of the songs come from those first records, certainly the Neil Young and the Judy Collins and Richard and Linda Thompson, you know, and especially Richard. I began as a young teenager to love British folk music. Sandy Denny, I felt like such a resonance with her, and with Linda Thompson and June Tabor. I felt like that's me. That's how I sound. And there was just a sort of I wouldn't call it a somber quality, but there's a soulfulness that's a white Celtic soulfulness that those ladies had, that I just learned from. And so anyway, that is the story of me and the story of Mark and then Mark said, Mary, and you said it too, you've got to produce this in surround. You have a whole new surround audience. And so we did, and we were lucky enough to have Ronald Prent be, you know, half an hour from Mark at that wonderful Valhalla studio, you know, and Darcy Proper. And so it was a no-brainer for us. And so I love that every single song on this record lives so deep inside my heart and my DNA. So for each of those songs, it's a personal experience for me. And Mark and I had to make this our own. If you're going to do a cover, just like with Dark Side, it's not a copy. I'm not a copy artist. It's bring your own sensibility musically, soulfully to it. And I think we did that. Some of these songs, you know, are sacred cows. It's like, you don't touch Nick Drake. Right. But Riverman had to do it. just had it, one of the most beautiful songs I have ever heard in my life. Heard it, however many years ago as a teenager, you would, 50 years ago, and said to myself, someday I'm going to record that. And of course, ELO, because I love it. So my favorite ELO song is Can't Get It Out of My Head. And I thought that was a great title for this record, because all of these songs, I've never gotten them out of my head, ever.
It's very fitting.
Yeah.
So you have single-handedly covered about half my questions. And you just
I told you I'm the talkiest girl in the class, as I was once told.
well, and I've been working on talking less. So this is cool. But that brings us like close to my final questions, which is cool because we're short on time.
Yeah.
And so you had just mentioned Ronald and Darcy. From the artist perspective, can you just describe for us what the mixing and mastering process was like?
At the beginning, I was confused by what was going on with the stereo mix. I was, and I am so used to a certain way of being mixed and recorded, little bit addicted to it. That it's like, well, that's how I sound. And Mark had a very different philosophy. The philosophy that I had been used to was the vocal is the main thing, and then everything else surrounds that and serves to frame the vocal. Ronald Prent, from my perspective, works differently. He does the mix and then sits the vocal inside of that. So instead of the mix serving the vocal serves he may completely disagree with me. And we had a different idea about reverbs. Now, I know I'm a reverb junkie. I make no bones about it. I love it. I love singing in bathrooms and stairwells. And so a lot of people have complained that I use too much reverb, because I even rehearse with reverb. I mean, I have my little setup right here. Sometimes I don't even know what I sound like without it, and so he was using a reverb that I was not used to, because it needed to cut through, this gorgeous mix that he was doing. And I was like, that's not what I sound like. Mark had it, but, and then I began to understand, especially on the more dense material, like Can't Get It Out of My Head, like Don't Let It Bring You Down. I got it, where he was coming from. And then there were a few songs where they are mixed like the old-fashioned Mary Fahl way. Since You've Asked is like that. The Great Valerio is like that. But he said, yes, but those are simpler songs. And it wasn't until I heard that surround mix that I completely understood his whole. It's not a thinking process. It's more of a sonic process. I got it. And then I realized, oh, wow. Oh, well, of course this works. It's exactly. And, again, sometimes you get set in your ways, and I'm guilty of that sometimes. But he changed my mind. So there you have it. That was interesting. I wish that, the constraint of this was the lockdown, and, New York State had very strict rules about studios. So normally I am, as Mark discovered, I am extremely hands-on. I will listen to every tiny little thing. Whereas with Dark Side, I just knew their vision was so clear. They didn't really need my input other than my creative input, but they didn't need me to help direct it. Whereas with other things we've done, when I work with Mark, I am, I'm right there with him every step of the way. And so that was hard for me, not to be there sitting right next to Ronald Prent. And so I had to get used to it. I had to trust. I just had to learn to trust the process. And I'm glad I did. I think I am so proud of this record, because it was a labor of love, and Mark loved each one of these songs, except for maybe the Richard Thompson, because he wasn't as familiar with that. He had never heard the Great Valerio before. And I think that was a good thing, because, you get so drawn in by the Richard Thompson style of guitar playing. Right. He hadn't heard that. So he was able to just deconstruct and do his own thing with that. And the outro of The Great Valerio is just it was one of those perfect Mark Doyle moments. He does that sort of circus sounding organ, and it's just so haunting and perfect. And the thing about Mark that you'd have to work with him to understand is he is such a cat that, is what they call, great players in the business, that you take it for granted after a while. Everything he does, he lays it down perfectly the first time. So I would put him through the ringer like, nah, can we try the 12 string? And then let's try the other thing too. I can't make up my mind. And he'd just lay it down in the pocket beautifully the first time, no mistakes. And he can do anything. And he's as good a pianist as he is a guitar player, although his sensibility as a pianist is completely different from his sensibility as a rock guitarist. He for many, many years, he was on the road with, all these famous bands and solo acts, and he was an in-demand guitar player. But I love the way Mark plays piano. It's beautiful. And it's always shimmering and inventive. That's what I would say about him. And he's just a one man. I mean, you don't really need anybody else. It's Mark. And he's a wonderful band leader. He's such a grown up. He's such a pro. When I get up to Syracuse to rehearse for shows, those guys are rehearsed within an inch of their life. I mean, they are ready for me. And I have not experienced that in the past. So, and that's just it's very helpful to me. I would be lost without him. Lost.
We're coming down to just a few minutes left.
Okay. Yeah.
So I want to know, since you're evidently pro surround and immersive at this point.
I am. Yeah.
I'm hearing that this album may receive an Atmos mix.
Right. So we're thinking maybe 3, if people don't know about this, it is ferociously expensive to produce an entire album on Atmos. It just is.
Yeah.
But I think that the album deserves at least 3 of the songs should be in Atmos. And so we're kind of waiting to see what are the standouts. I would certainly think Tuesday Afternoon, hands down, that's the one. And maybe The Great Valerio. We're not sure yet. Maybe can't get it out of my head, but we will do. And Ronald, of course, will be the person that does it. And I don't know. I mean, Atmos, it's just the whole setup. How can anyone afford that? I mean, but do you have to have like
it is a little mind blowing.
Do they have just headphones where you can get the same feel?
I'll hold my opinion on that.
Okay, all right.
I think you should have the whole speaker array, but there's like
You put it in
360
the
audio.
ceiling? Do you have to put it on the ceiling?
Talk to Ronald about 360 audio, because I think that can work through earbuds if they have like a certain technology.
Right.
So, all right. So surround and immersive aside, live studio, covers, your own material, back catalog. What does the future hold for you musically? Where are you headed?
Well, right now, I mean, it has been, it's overwhelming to get a record out as an indie in this day and age. You have no idea how many hats I have to wear. So we are starting to play out, and we will, for the next year or so, we will play this record out live, which I'm so excited about. I have a show in New York coming up on August 9th at City Winery.
I know you want to come to California.
I know I do. And I want to bring the band there, and I want to bring the band to other cities, Chicago, Atlanta. So that's that. And then I know that I have to get back to writing again. This was fun, and it was a great escape for me. I just immersed myself in it, and to call it immersive audio, it was but I have to get back to writing again. And so I will. And I keep notebooks, but it's just, I will start that focus again. I know it's out there. I have to do it.
I agree.
So that's where I'll go. And of course it will be in surround when we do it again.
Please,
and which is nice. I like to think when I write, the challenge is that when I write with just a guitar, then I have to keep things fairly simple, because I'm okay, but I'm not Mark, and when I play out solo, I have to render this.
Yeah.
So, but when I think in my head, when I'm composing in my head, I think much more orchestrally. So I've got to find a happy medium there. But the songs that I write orchestrally are, I think, more interesting, more complicated. But again, it's like then I'm stuck when I'm, in Chicago by myself having to render that song. So those songs have to have solid melodies and what they say, like good bones,
Yeah.
Anyway, it's always a challenge. I never think it's good enough, and I throw away a lot of material. Just because I wrote it doesn't mean I don't have an ego about my songwriting. It has to be something that I want to sing again and again and again.
That's important.
It's scary to me. Always
Okay.
scary.
Okay, we are down to the wire.
Mhm.
Final thoughts. What would you like viewers, friends, family, fans, what would you like to impart to everyone the most?
Get this record. Get it. It's I mean, you're going to hear great musicianship on it, and these are all great songs. These are songs you will love. I mean, Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd. Can't Get It Out of My Head. Tuesday Afternoon. They're phenomenal songs done in a very unique way, and I really try to inhabit the material, and just keep the essential integrity of the song, but make it my own. And I think you'll love this record. I think you will.
Well, I agree. This gets full marks from Life and Surround.
Yay!
Pick up this record plus Mary's other records, everyone. She will not disappoint.
Thanks so much, Mike. You're just swell. Thank you.
I have had a marvelous time speaking with you once again, and we're here to support you. So record it, put it out, and we'll be listening.
Thank you so much. Take care of yourself.
You too.
Bye-bye.